Oh, hey, good afternoon or good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Wednesday broadcast of Rebel Roundup. I'm your host, Sheila Gunn-Reid, and joining me from beautiful Regina, Saskatchewan, is my friend, frequent Rebel News contributor, Lise Merle. Lise, how's it going, buddy?
Well, hello, Sheila. Welcome back to Canada. I'm so happy you survived your whirlwind
Me
trip to
too.
the other side of the earth and survived all of those elites and their high-priced escorts, which I read all about on thedailymail.com. It is indeed a beautiful gray day here in Regina, and I'm just so happy to be here. I'd like to name this version of the Rebel Roundup the Hump Day Hoedown with Lisa and Sheila, because I mean, what better for a Wednesday than us two gabbing away just like we do. Anyway, yeah, great to be here.
I'm so glad you are. Giving me a little break from David Menzies as we unleash him out on the unsuspecting public. I should tell everybody how they can get involved with the show. If you're watching us on the censorship platform of YouTube, I appreciate you doing that. There are 1.7 million sets of eyeballs watching us from time to time over there. And I understand why you stick it out. Because even though we're completely demonetized there and they are censoring you there, they're telling you that you shouldn't be there. And so I do a lot of things for spite too. I get you, people. But if you want to support the work that we do on a platform that doesn't hate you, might I suggest you wander on over to Rumble. On Rumble, it's very much the same interface as YouTube. It's so user-friendly, and they don't censor you, and they allow you to support the work that we do through a paid chat on Rumble. It's called a Rumble Rant. If it's over the $5 US cutoff, we're obligating ourselves to read it on air and respond to it, but don't let that be the bar for entry, because we frequently respond to chats that fall below the $5 US cutoff if we have time, and normally we do our best to make time. So that's that. We've got a real packed pierogi of a show, a really tightly rolled cabbage roll today, full of delicious filling. So let's get right into it. We are experiencing tariff mania in Canada because a lot of the premiers, Doug Ford, well, they weren't smart enough to make their case directly to Trump to avoid the tariffs and make some friends in the incoming administration, the way Premier Danielle Smith has. And she's made friends with the energy producers and refiners in the United States, which is exactly what she needs to do, because those people also have Trump's ear. So I betcha we're going to escape the tariffs here in the oil and gas sector, but not Doug Ford. And if it weren't for the people being harmed, I would say he deserved it. And so we've got a video. White House Press Secretary Carolyn Leavitt confirms them tariffs for the auto sector and the like, they're coming.
Give us an update on the president's plans for his tariff agenda. He spoke a lot about this yesterday, and there's a couple of dates coming up that he's spoken to. Number one, February 1st, he's alluded to both the potential for tariffs for Canada and Mexico, but also China to take effect on those days. What's he thinking about that?
Yeah.
Should those countries expect that?
Again, he was asked and answered this question this past weekend when he took a lot of questions from the press, and he said that the February 1st date for Canada and Mexico still holds. And the president has also put out specific statements in terms of Canada and Mexico when it comes to what he expects in terms of border security. We have seen a historic level of cooperation from Mexico, but again, as far as I'm still tracking, and that was last night talking to the president directly, February 1st is still on the books.
Yikes.
Get ready for it, Canada. This is what we got with our governments and all of the premiers, save Danielle Smith. This is what we've got. They took such a gross antagonistic approach to Trump, who responds to, one thing. This is what Trump responds to. It's loyalty. And these people show such a shocking disrespect of the United States, of our biggest trading partner. And we are going to suffer the consequences, Canada, even if there is a carve out for Alberta energy, or for Canadian energy, I should say, because Saskatchewan does play a big part in that too. There is going to be such dire consequences for the rest of everything that we export. And don't listen to Doug Ford when he says Canada is not for sale. Everything we make in Canada is for sale. In particular, our natural resources are for sale. We got tech for sale. We got ag for sale. We've got, potash and uranium and forestry products. And this is is shaping up to be an absolutely economically disastrous time in Canada, and we got nobody to thank but all of the premiers and our federal government, who is just fumbling this. More fumbles than a year of football games by our federal government.
How many of them do you think read The Art of the Deal?
Oh,
Before they're
0%.
dealing with the guy.
0%. They were reading Mark Carney's book. They were reading Christian Freeland's book. They,
Yeah.
I mean, these, yeah. I mean, there is a way to soften the blow as it pertains to President Trump, and these people just have no idea what they're doing. Absolutely no idea.
Yeah, and I completely reject this narrative from the likes of Doug Ford, and I saw from the unions the other day that Danielle Smith is some sort of traitor to the nation. Do you know what she's trying to do, you union jerks? Save your jobs. That's what she's trying to do. She's trying to save roughly 550,000 Canadian jobs that are directly supported by Canadian oil and gas. So she's doing what Doug Ford was unwilling to do, and that is fight for the jobs of Canadians. A lot of Trump's foreign policy and economic policy comes down to, does he like you and trust you?
That's
and
right.
She went down there and she made sure that he likes her and that he trusts her. And that's going to go a long way with the administration, but she didn't stop with the administration. She started making friends with the Western governors, the oil producers, and the oil refiners in the United States. She got them on her side. And let's remember that this is a president who is not against Canadian oil and gas. One of the first things he did when he was president the first time around was sign the Keystone XL pipeline into life after it had been blocked by the Democrats. So he's willing to buy Canadian oil and gas. We have somebody who's willing to make the case for Canadian oil and gas. And the other premiers, because of some misplaced jingoistic sense of nationalism, want us to kill our jobs, but so many jobs in their provinces too.
And the secondary mistake that all of these premiers and our federal government is making is assuming that they are dealing with the same Donald Trump that they dealt with in 2016. And I cannot state this clearly enough. Donald Trump coming in for his second term is a completely different man. And had they been reading the room, because when he came in the first time, when he came into his first presidency, if we're all being really honest, he didn't know how Washington worked. He didn't know about how the federal government worked in the United States. He was a virgin president. And after 4 years of vicious persecution by the Democrats and by Joe Biden's administration, Donald Trump learned exactly who his enemies were. And had any of Canada's federal government been paying attention during that time, they would have realized that they're dealing with a completely different man. This man is not working with people that he cannot trust. And what we know is that he cannot trust who is in charge in Canada right now, which is insane. We have a non-functioning government. Okay, nobody at the head of our government. The Liberals are undertaking this insane humiliation ritual in the form of a leadership run or leadership race within their party. We have nobody driving the wagon while our biggest trading partner is threatening us with certain economic devastation. It is insane what is happening to Canada. We are being held as political prisoners. Canadians are being held as political prisoners by this insane, corrupt federal government that doesn't know how to put a shirt on the right way, Sheila. Okay, doesn't know how to dress themselves in the morning, and I'm frankly shocked that more people aren't acknowledging this. We are in an absolute national crisis, and it is the doing of our federal government and the NDP that upheld them for so long.
Maybe, Olivia, while we're talking about the next couple of things, you can find that Justin Trudeau with his shirt on backwards. But then I was poking around and it looks like the gray sweater, which is on backwards, or at least looks like it's on backwards, could be the WEF uniform. Because there's a few of them. I think Mark Carney was wearing the very similar sweater.
Mark Carney and Jagmeet Singh, they're all gray cashmere sweaters. My husband had one. I literally put it in the burn barrel like yesterday. Like we cannot associate with the gray. Here it comes. Here it comes. And I would just like to say, my very first job was selling menswear at Eaton's, the department store, and so I have dressed a lot of men. Like I actually love getting men dressed and dressing them, and without question, this sweater is backwards. This is what I'm saying. Like there's an extra inch of fabric along the back, so that
Here,
it's sort of
and then in the armpits too. Do you see that? It's sort of puckering in the armpits.
Yes.
Good grief.
I'm saying he got dressed in the dark. This is what I'm saying. But if we can't listen, if a man can't be trusted to get himself dressed in the morning, can we trust him with running the country for 1 second more? I would argue not.
Oh, I
I would
forget.
argue not.
I thought I saw that sweater was like $550. Now, I don't begrudge the man his wealth. He was born into it, but at least, like put your shirt on the right way before you
I
sashay
I
out to your press
I
conference.
absolutely begrudge him for his wealth. While 25% of Canadians are lining up at
Okay.
food banks, can't feed their kids, and this guy is waltzing around in a $550
Yeah, read the
cashmere
room.
sweater, I absolutely begrudge him. Like, read the room, loser. Go to Mark's, get a $30 polyester like everybody else's husband. No,
Yeah.
no, look at this guy. Like, absolutely outrageous. Oh,
Get
he
your
looks like
Kirkland.
such a lame dad. Like, look at him. Just
Oh, God.
absolute lame dad energy with his little Taylor Swift bracelets still on. Like,
Get your Kirkland
Gross.
jeans out.
gotta whip up those Kirklands.
Gotta get your Kirklands on. We've got that's an inside joke.
Such a
We've
good inside joke.
Oh, goodness. NDP leader Jagmeet Singh says the Liberals should discuss a plan to support workers. That's their solution, just paying people to stay home instead of taking the heat down in the relationship with the Trump administration and doing the things that Trump is asking us to do that are not unreasonable, like securing the border to stop fentanyl and human trafficking, which is what a normal government should do to start with. But let's hear from the socialist wing of the Liberal Party of Canada.
When we think about the analysis that's out there, if those Trump tariffs
Ray
come
Sweater.
in place, there are hundreds and thousands of Canadian jobs at risk. Think about what that means for those workers, hundreds of thousands of workers, for their families, for those communities. This could be devastating for our country. So we do need to have a plan in place to support those that are impacted, those businesses, those workers, most importantly. I have not had any conversations with other opposition leaders. I think we need to come together to have a discussion about what is the best way forward. I've not had any discussions with the government related to this. If there is any desire to move forward, the government should call us together, like we did during COVID, and discuss a plan that supports workers. We, as a party of working people, a party founded by workers, want to make sure that there's a plan in place for workers. It's why we said from the beginning, EI is clearly not up to the task. During the pandemic, we realized EI does not cover the majority of Canadian workers. We called for changes to happen to EI so that we would be better prepared if something happens again that disrupts our economy. The Liberals did not listen. And so we are now in this position where we have an insufficient EI, the threat of tariffs, and many workers lying awake at night saying, am I going to lose my job or not? So I hope that there's a plan moving forward.
Okay, so what Jagmeet Singh is doing right here is signaling to the government what he needs to hear in order to keep on side with the government. Small round of applause for Lise, who last week on this show said Mark Carney is a very dangerous man because he could offer a sweetheart deal to Jagmeet Singh that Jagmeet Singh just would not be able, in his bad faith way of corrupt operation, be able to say no to. And what Jagmeet Singh is doing is signaling what he needs to hear from the government to stay on side this coalition. This is insane.
Yeah, all he does is go from one act of blackmail to the next. Before it was the drug plan with the Liberals. That's what he needed to keep the Liberals in power. And now it is
dental care. Then dental care.
Yeah, dental
drug
care,
plan,
and now
dental
it's
care,
this.
and now this. Yep, and now this. And so he wants protection for Canadian public sector workers so that they won't be impacted by the tariff threat that Donald Trump has promised to bring down on the people of Canada. It is insane what is happening here. It is insane. And with Canadians with no recourse to do anything about it. Like, if ever we've needed to acknowledge that we are a totally broken country, we are seeing it play out in real time.
Yeah, and he keeps prattling on about workers, but their solution is shutter in the one cudgel we have against the Americans, and that's Alberta and Saskatchewan, and to some extent British Columbia, and oil and gas. That's the one thing they have. The thing that they kept saying there was no business case for. The thing that they kept saying, well, we should phase it out. And time is ticking on Canadian oil and gas. That thing, it's the one thing that they think they can use against the Americans, which they constitutionally can't. And nobody seems to care about those jobs except Danielle Smith.
No, it is our natural resources are the jurisdiction of the provinces. So this is not an item that the federal government can barter on our behalf. Listen, if Legault wants to go in and say, we are going to withhold all of the maple syrup exports from Quebec, you know what? Fine, go ahead. You punish those Americans with withholding your maple syrup. But as it pertains to the natural resources of Alberta and Saskatchewan, especially, hands off, federal government. Those are not your resources to be able to bargain with. So find another negotiation tactic that's more along the lines of what the Americans want to hear. And it is border security and regular fentanyl stoppage from across the border, because of course all of our safe supply of fentanyl and meth and cocaine and all of the other illegal substances are going straight across the border. Of course they are, because it's a corrupt system.
Yeah, I mean, safe supply from British Columbia is ending up in Alberta and killing our kids. Of course, it's actually a lot closer to get it across into the United States than to come across the mountains into Alberta. Of course, this say our government safe supply is poisoning Americans. Of course it is. Of course, there's a reason why the Americans, or why the federal government doesn't want the safe supply specifically marked. And that's because when it is found in arrests in the United States,
it can't be traced back to the
Exactly.
government of Canada or to the provincial governments that propagate it into our populations. But I mean, if we've ever needed another example of our governments trying to kill us, like literally trying to kill us, you can just look at safe supply and put it on a billboard and say, well, right there. I mean, people are dying because of the mishandling of this entire file in the name of health and safety, no less.
Speaking of the horrors of British Columbia, David Eby, the NDP premier there, he knows what's up. His solution to this is, of course, shutter in Canadian oil and gas and just pay people to stay home. And what could possibly go wrong? With adding another $1 trillion to the debt. That's not going to cause inflation or anything. Go ahead, David. Let us hear it.
We have heard the President of the United States say that it's his intention to impose tariffs on Saturday. And there has been a repetition of that commitment from key members of the administration. This is obviously a huge concern to British Columbians. And even if they're not directly working in export-related industries, not seriously as they did the COVID response. And for our part here in British Columbia, that we will fill in the gaps to make sure that British Columbians are protected.
Premier, so you've just mentioned the pandemic style kind of relief plans. Could you just provide a little bit more detail on what this could look like here in BC?
We know that part of the proposed federal response is retaliatory tariffs on the United States on billions of dollars of U.S. imports into Canada. That'll result in the federal government collecting a significant amount of money that should be immediately deployed across the country to affected individuals and businesses to help them survive. Whatever it takes to make sure that we come out the other end stronger is very important. Through COVID, we supported businesses here in British Columbia with grants to be able to get through. The federal government had loans. They provided people supports who were laid off through employment insurance. These are the kinds of responses that we expect to see through this period. The projections that we have seen indicate that this could be more serious for our provincial economy than the 2008 recession. And certainly the most severe economic impact we've seen in a while here in Canada and British Columbia. And unfortunately, it'll have significant effects on the Americans as well.
Sheila, every part of that clip is concerning, because what they are doing right now is building a false story to declare a national emergency,
Yes.
to print billions of dollars in relief to Canadians that are going to be impacted by these tariffs, and to take control of government. They are literally manufacturing the emergency that they are going to use as a pretext to keep hanging on to power. We are seeing it in real time right now. And the last thing Canadians need is an out of control government with no leadership, okay, and no mandate to do this, declaring an emergency and printing billions of dollars that are going to put us into debt for the rest of all eternity, while muzzling us and censoring us and making it look like they're being helpful. We just saw it in real time by what David Eby said.
I just have one thing to add to that. I thought it was a little bit on the nose, maybe too on the nose, that there was like the police sirens in the background, obviously headed off to respond to a government-enabled drug overdose. So somewhere nearby the David Eby press conference. They did, and the thing is, they know tariffs are coming. They know tariffs are going to crush the Ontario economy. They know that it's going to crush a large portion of the British Columbia economy. And so what is their solution? Nuke another 550,000 jobs. Wouldn't you want the oil patch humming along as hard as it can go, drilling and building and drilling and building to make sure that that at least some part of the Canadian economy is afloat to prop up everybody else? But for them, they think, you know what? We've got to throw these people on the bonfire to heat the rest of us. It's crazy.
That's exactly right. They're throwing Alberta and Saskatchewan energy producers under the bus. They're saying, if we're suffering, you're suffering too.
Yeah.
And to be completely honest, this is suffering that was made possible by their own missteps along the way. But I mean, they're not going to let Western Canadian energy producers save the day. I mean, that would rip apart their argument that everything about it is evil and bad when it's anything but.
Speaking of timing to hang on to power, old Doug Ford has decided that now is the time to call an election a year early. I guess it can be done. You can go to an early election if you can believe that, because Justin's buddy Doug is going to an election. He just went to the Governor General and asked, or to the Lieutenant Governor, I guess, and asked him, I don't know who it is in Ontario, I don't pay that close attention to Ontario politics, to drop the writ. So let's hear from Doug, who honestly looks like Punxsutawney Phil, the groundhog. He does. Go ahead.
In these uncertain times, I'm asking the people of Ontario for their trust. I'm asking the people for a strong, stable, 4-year mandate to do whatever it takes to protect Ontario. The people of our province, like people across Canada, are facing unprecedented challenge. President Trump is threatening steep and sweeping tariffs that will devastate Canada's economy on February 1st. And I mean it when I say devastate. Hundreds of thousands of Ontario jobs are at risk, and not just factory workers, service workers, the great construction workers here, retail workers, everyday hardworking people in offices and factories across Ontario. When workers lose their jobs, entire communities feel pain. Bills go unpaid, local businesses lose customers, families worry about their future. And let's be clear, this isn't just about tariffs. The president has threatened economic force. He's even floated the unthinkable, taking over Canadian territory. Let me say this loud and clear, Canada is not for sale. Not to President Trump, not to anyone. The sad fact is, there is no reason for President Trump to be doing this. Canada and the United States are strongest when we work together.
Then quit fighting with him. Quit fighting with them. You know, like he says, what did he say? We're going to do whatever it takes to protect Ontario workers. Okay, great. Yes, but you didn't do whatever it took, because whatever it took was going to Mar-a-Lago and pleading your case, which you didn't do. And again, why is it bad when Danielle Smith does whatever it takes to protect workers? Why is that a bad thing, but it's a good thing for old Punxsutawney Ford in Ontario? It's ridiculous. And yes, as you rightly point out, Lise, Ontario is for sale. Just about everything they make is for the export market. So yes, they are for sale. You're supposed to be open for business.
I gotta think somewhere Rob Ford is spinning in his grave like a rotisserie chicken, listening to Doug Ford spout out, blather on about workers. Like, if you shut your eyes and listen to that, you can't tell the difference between Doug Ford and Jagmeet Singh by the way they talk. And the only reason Doug Ford, is mad at Danielle Smith is because how emasculating is it that she is doing a much better job and has bigger balls than you, Doug? How does that feel? I bet that's a painful little realization for good old not Rob Ford. And further to Doug spouting off the way he did. And as you alluded, everything in Ontario is for sale, and he is absolutely mishandling this. There are millions of people in Ontario that are screaming at the top of their lungs for a federal election. And instead of getting the election they want, they're getting an election that they don't want. So I don't think that I'm alone as a conservative in Canada, hoping that our conservative pals in Ontario just don't go to the polls. Just don't go to the polls this year. I mean, you know what? I think Doug Ford needs to learn a lesson, and he's going to learn a lesson by losing a bunch of seats. So it's just a little thought for our Ontario friends and neighbors.
When he loses some seats because conservatives don't show up, because that's what conservatives do, we cannot
just don't show up. That's right.
We cannot abide the false conservatism of our leaders, and so we just don't show up. And I hope there is a palace coup staged against him, because, I mean, it looks as though Doug Ford is not learning the lessons of Erin O'Toole. People don't want your watered down baloney, and you need to offer them an actual alternative to the Liberals instead of just standing slightly to the right of them. You need to offer a real alternative. And when you do that, you will be popular, a la Pierre Poilievre.
That's exactly right. And we saw this exact result. It is a disaster. We saw this exact same result in the most recent Saskatchewan provincial election, when the governing Sask party lost a ton of ground to the NDP opposition. It wasn't that the NDP won over anybody's votes. It was that all of the Sask party supporters stayed home that day. And Doug Ford should be learning a lesson. He's not. He's sitting in his made in Canada or made in China. Canada is not for sale. I mean, how many did they order? 1,000? They're giving them to every second Tom, Dick, and Harry in Ontario right now. It's gross. Yeah, it's gross. They're shooting themselves in the foot, but keep going. Pew, pew, little bugger.
I want to get my hands on one of those hats because I want to check the label. I bet you they're made in China or at least offshore. But yeah, Ontario's not for sale. Everything in Ontario is for sale, including Doug Ford. He's pretty well for sale to the Liberals for a handout for a battery plant by Stellantis here or Volkswagen there. Right. So he'll suck up to the Liberals for anything.
And he was like, and Trump has floated the unthinkable idea of taking over Canadian territory.
I'm listening.
Doug, it's not unthinkable. What it is attractive to many, many Canadians. We're looking over at the United States, watching their come into their golden age, saying, I want that for us, because we have been so abused and so maligned and so viciously attacked by our federal government and by many of our provincial governments that we're looking south of the border saying, yes, please. Yes, please.
You know
Trump.
what? We've got an article from Jordan Peterson on that exact topic. I've got a quick Rumble rant to read and then an ad read to do. And then I think, Olivia, do we have a Rebel ad that we're showing? Okay, so I'll do that and then we'll get into some of the rest of the stuff. Yuda Bursey or Judah Bursey, I think you told me, Yuda, one time how to say your name, and I forgot, and I'm very sorry, but you give us $5 and I appreciate that. And you say, if our government were smart, come on, they would have listened to Trump. On the other hand, you can't fix stupid. Yeah, I think you answered your own question. If our government were smart and cared about Canadian jobs, it's just something that they've never manifested. They would have not been so confrontational and adversarial with our single largest trading partner.
But this is a government. You're right. This is a government that is absolutely incapable of hearing things that doesn't suit their narrative. If it doesn't suit the narrative of the federal government, they put their fingers in their ears, they say, la la la, and they start talking about misinformation and disinformation. This is a government that is completely untethered from the realities, the opinions, the wants, and the needs of its electorate, and nothing is proving it more than this trade war with America.
I mean, imagine burning down the relationship that has existed since Confederation with the Americans. They've done it in like 2 months, 3 months. It's fascinating.
And the only reason like Canada exists is because Upper Canada and Lower Canada decided that they hated the Americans more. Well, we're seeing a big shift in opinion in Canada right now going, we like the Americans a lot better than we like our own federal government. And there's so many parts and I know you said that we're going to get onto it, but now that it's in my brain, I just need to data dump this on you. When Trump said that if Canadians agreed to become Americans, that we would have protections, that we would be protected, that our healthcare would be better, that our economy would be better, that we would pay a lot less in taxes, what appeals to a great many, especially Western Canadians, is that we would have the protection of the United States of America, and especially for Western Canadians, that means protection against the government of Canada. You can't tell me that that's not attractive to people that have been abused by this government to a point where they are legitimately looking at the United States saying, yep, sign us up.
Yeah, imagine states' rights protected in the Constitution and supreme, instead of having to fight with the federal government to protect your jurisdiction.
I just think, all I have to do is think the words freedom of speech, and I get a little tingle all over my body. Okay, an all over body tingle just thinking about that level of freedom. Second Amendment rights. Don't even talk to me, Sheila. Don't even talk to me. It excites me to a point that I can't even hardly. Did you hear what he did this morning? He just told schools that if they float critical race theory or radical gender ideology to kids in their schools, they will lose their funding outright. And I went, done. Sign me up. This is what I want to like. This is what I want my life to look like. There's really nothing unattractive at this point about becoming Americans. There is nothing more unattractive.
Okay, we've got to hit this ad read, and then I think that is exactly the case that Jordan Peterson is making. So this one is from Positive. If you have a dog, Lisa and I both do. We've all been there. Our pup goes from full of energy to sick and miserable in an instant and at the worst times. Then we're calling vets in the middle of the night or on weekends trying to find a clinic that will take us in because maybe Morgan, the wonder dog, ate all the Smarties out of the Halloween candy like she did. It's a terrible way to manage your dog's health, not to mention your stress levels and your monthly budget. That's why people are getting the Pet Emergency Kit by Positive. That's PAWSITIV. It contains critical medications and supplies that can not only keep you out of the veterinary office, but may even save your dog's life. These kits contain critical medications like activated charcoal, styptic powder, and more, and may save your dog's life. Head on over to positive.com and use the code STUDIO to get 15% off your Pet Emergency Kit. Okay, let's hit Rebel ad break, and then we will go into the second segment, if you wouldn't mind, Sask and Alberta, and we'll talk about Jordan Peterson's great article that is making Andrew Coyne lose his marbles.
Canadians know the national anthem. They stand in silence to remember those who died for this country. But not every Canadian knows their rights and freedoms. The Freedom Passport will change that. It looks and feels like a Canadian passport, but contains the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms in a portable, easy-to-read format. The Freedom Passport. Order one for yourself and for all the freedom lovers that you love at freedompassport.ca.
I'm in Brazil, so I'm using a VPN to get on the internet. What's a VPN? It stands for a virtual private network, and you get around these government firewalls. Suddenly, the president of Brazil banned his whole country from going on Twitter. It was a political censorship news. I've downloaded the VPN from a company called PIA VPN. We've teamed up with them at Rebel, and it's a great deal. I got on the internet really quickly, safely, and even I'm a bit of a technophobe. I managed to figure it out with 2 clicks. And here's the great news. If you go to piavpn.com/rebel news, not only do you get a big discount, but they pay us a bit of a commission too. Everyone's a winner. Your freedom, your VPN, and a little bit of cash coming to support Rebel News. I'm using it myself to get around the censors in Brazil. You can use it too. That's piavpn.com/rebel news.
Okay, now this is how I knew Jordan Peterson's article was great before I even read it. And it was the fainting couch routine of one of the boiled potatoes with the skin left on that appears on CBC's At Issue panel. Yes, I am talking about Andrew Coyne. And he, clutching his pearls and laying on his fainting couch with his petticoats array, wrote this. This is appalling. Quite apart from the blame the victim crapology of the thesis, the author is, and how can I put this, not well. A guy who took the time to write this screed is probably not well. If Peterson were not a clear and present danger, oh my goodness, if he were not a mouthpiece for every insane conspiracy theory and boiling resentment in the Trumposphere at a particularly perilous moment, I would be genuinely concerned for his health. Okay, sure. And annoyed that the Post was exploiting his infirmity. This is the guy who thought Biden was okay, by the way. Like a circus freak show. Okay. But not in the circumstances. It's a bit like when Rob Ford was mayor. He's clearly in distress and very obviously needs help, but I'll have more time for sympathy when he's no longer in a position to do harm. Okay, so you would think that he is saying like, I don't know, maybe that Hamas maybe aren't the bad guys and maybe we should let them march in the streets on the weekend, stuff like that. No, it's a very well thought out Jordan Peterson article about how Canada writ large has genuinely been a bit of a bad neighbor to the Americans, taking them for granted, because part of Trump's threats to us about how I could take them over by force, but I could do it economically. I think that's a bargaining piece, but it also reveals a harsh truth. And that harsh truth is that our economy is in shambles. We are not as economically sound as we once were under Stephen Harper, and our woke military is overweight and their equipment is decrepit. So we could not just be taken over by the Americans, but by probably anybody, even problems from within. And Jordan Peterson writes that this anti-American nonsense, he says, such behavior, sadly, is a Canadian norm, particularly wherever the country is left-leaning, particularly wherever everyone believes axiomatically that we have all the virtues of our democratic compatriots to the south and then some, particularly wherever everyone is inclined to point self-righteously to the wonders of our now dreadful and even oft murderous free healthcare system and its oft associated highly dysfunctional, expensive, and increasingly unsustainable social safety net, and compare it to the free-for-all in the United States. They inevitably resort to if death threatens and they have the money. That combined attitude of essentially socialist sentiment and moral superiority was exemplified above all perhaps by former Prime Minister Trudeau. And I'm speaking now not of the Fields, who resigned in disgrace after sacrificing our economy to the gods of his self-serving utopian globalist delusion. I'm referring instead to the father who dallied so self-aggrandizingly with the Chinese Reds and the dictatorial communist Fidel Castro and rubbed the Americans' noses in it, moralizing intellectually and oh so fashionably all the while. We Canadians also pride ourselves in our peaceful and peacekeeping nature, contrasting that with the warmongering attitude of the gunslingers we secretly admire but publicly disdain, forgetting ever so conveniently that it is nothing but our positioning under the fearsome nuclear umbrella of the USA and our knowledge of the certainty of their military protection, if push comes to shove, that allows us to be the sheep of peace who bleat their undeserved self-regard with so little shame. That is so true. And I will put a pin on this by saying we're known around the world by Canadians are so nice, nice, nice. I would say we're passive aggressive. I wouldn't say we're nice.
Oh, no, we're passive aggressive, and so overtly morally superior. I mean, this is what Canadians claim, is that we are so much more superior than the Americans. It's almost laughable, when in truth, Americans run circles around us in terms of healthcare outcomes and their economic outcomes and their the opportunities that America provides its own citizens. One of the things that I thought was really funny about what Trump said in recent days about meeting with Justin Trudeau at Mar-a-Lago is that he joked. He was like, "Well, what if we stop subsidizing Canada?" And Trudeau, like an idiot, admits, just goes on and admits, "Well, we'd be done. Well, we'd be screwed." I'm like, well done, buddy. Like really super well done. But I think what's being missed by a real large portion of Canadians is we've already been taken over by China. Okay.
Right.
The amount of interference, the amount of electoral interference, the amount of foreign interference in our elections, in our policy decisions, we have already been taken over by devious and really awful influences that we just have no concept of, that many people have no concept of. Some of us are awake to this. Some of us understand what's happened to the country, but America is way, way, way down the line of dangerous countries when we think about who's the most dangerous foreign influences on Canadian culture and society.
Yeah,
America's way down that line.
They would not influence us adversely. Like they would
benefit us.
When I think about American influence on Canadian culture, I think, man, I'd really love to wear a pistol on my hip at the grocery store like they do in Montana. Like I think about that stuff. I think about their Constitution, which is one of the single greatest documents ever written because it is a restraining order against the government. And not only that, but they thought about man's nature for tyranny, our fallen nature for tyranny, when they wrote it, knowing that now is a time where we believe in freedom, but there will come a time where good times make bad men. And we need to make sure that we restrain our government from overreaching during those times. That's what I think about when I think about American influence on our politics. But then you've got people like, did anything that I read there sound dangerous and mentally ill? It actually was so well written, it was difficult to read, Andrew Coyne. You should try writing like Jordan Peterson once in a while, you boiled potato.
He can't. I mean, all he's capable of is ugly little hot takes on the CPC and little barbs on Twitter. I mean, this is a bitter man who is in the dying embers of a institution that he's been part of since the very beginning. But I think, just going back to your talking about the American Constitution, one thing that Americans understand a lot better than possibly any country is that when their federal government offers them something, they know that there's a trade. The federal government never offers you something in exchange for nothing. And if anything, Donald Trump is correcting that. I do believe that he's working in the best interest of the American people right now, and I can't wait to see the golden age of America. We would only be so lucky to be able to sort of ride on the coattails of that.
Yeah, I'm going to steal a turn of phrase from Sirius XM Patriots Andrew Wilkow. He frequently says, anytime the government is giving you something with an open hand, the other hand is a fist. So be careful what you take from the federal government. Now let's switch lanes. Bless you, by the way.
Thank you. Sorry, it snuck up on me.
Let's go to news out of Saskatchewan. Shocking and refreshing, says Estevan Mayor and the regional municipality Reeve about coal-fired power's possible revival. So the Estevan Reeve, Jason LeBlanc, and Estevan Mayor Tony Cernick stand with Boundary Power Dam Station behind them in the distance, and they are celebrating Sask Power's look at refurbishing instead of shutting down coal-fired generation plants, saving jobs, saving the coal industry, saving some mining jobs, and providing cheap, reliable electricity to people in Saskatchewan, but also people in Alberta when our green contaminated grid fails us whenever it gets below -20.
Yeah, this was unexpected news for Saskatchewan's southeast, where a great many thousands of people are employed in the coal mining industry and the coal industry. After years and years of the government of Saskatchewan saying, we're getting out of coal, and this is to chase just insane, net zero targets for Saskatchewan to get a hold of federal dollars, I might add. This announcement was made a couple of weeks ago, I think, or last week actually, and this came as a huge surprise to the people in and around Estevan, Saskatchewan, and it couldn't have come at a better time. The mines down there, they are just absolutely huge. Huge endeavors. The mines were planning on winding down their production. They were shutting down drag lines. And so this is a very, very welcome piece of news for Southeast Saskatchewan. You'll recall, Sheila, last year during one of Alberta's several deep freezes, when we have temperatures hovering -30, -40. After
-51 here. -51.
Was it?
Yeah.
And Alberta, yeah, and let's not forget, in the terrible, awful, dark days of Rachel Notley in Alberta, she shut down all of Alberta's coal industry and signed up for wind and signed up for solar, which is absolutely useless against a Canadian winter. And last year, when Alberta's grid, you guys were getting grid alerts like, don't run your, Sheila's sitting in her basement. Don't run your space heaters, guys. Don't run your dryers. It is insane that in Alberta, world superpower when it pertains to energy production, that you would be getting grid alerts. That's right. That it was Saskatchewan's coal mining area in southeast Saskatchewan that saved the day. It was incredible what happened, and I think the government of Saskatchewan acknowledged that. So this is a great and welcome move by the government, and well done, Estevan, Saskatchewan. That's one of our favorite places, actually. Sheila, we will be in southeast Saskatchewan next summer, will we not? At a little rodeo. So looking forward to that. Looking forward to that, southeast Saskatchewan.
Estevan, Saskatchewan saved Alberta during our grid alerts because, like Saskatchewan, we have so much coal in our province. We have 800 years of the cleanest burning coal on the face of the earth, right under the soil here in Alberta. We don't really conventionally mine because it's so close to the surface. In fact, I can't drink my well water because it's gray, because it is in a coal seam. That's how much coal we have. And so the NDP phased out coal, but they created such an adverse investment climate here in Alberta that the option, natural gas, you couldn't get any investors to build natural gas plants. So now we're in this big lag where we need natural gas generation. They phased out coal, and there's not enough production to meet the needs. But they phased out coal. They just phased it out here because we still get coal-fired electricity from Saskatchewan, from Montana, and Wyoming. So what we did is we didn't phase out coal. We phased out Alberta coal jobs. That's what we did.
That is exactly it. Well, Saskatchewan, southeast Saskatchewan, thanks you for your business, Alberta, and we're more than happy to supply you with all of your energy needs.
Let's go to quickly these two couple of things that I wanted to talk about. One is yours, one is mine. Regina Public Schools keep their gender identity bathroom policy after your premier said, nope, everybody's going to go to the bathroom of their biology. He walked it back after the NDP made the case for their own children, quite literally their own children, and they put it back on the school boards who were the problem to begin with.
That is exactly what happened. You'll recall that immediately before the Saskatchewan election, Scott Moe came out and said, right, no more biological boys in biological girls' washrooms and vice versa. And it's not too much to suggest the Sask party only did as well as they did because of that announcement. 1 week after the election, he walked it back. This is due to pressure and mainstream media coverage of a Saskatchewan NDP MLA's 2 biological sons, who both identify as girls.
Imagine the odds.
Imagine the odds of that, having twin biological boys identifying as biological girls. These biological boys have displaced 160 girls in the town of Balgonie, Saskatchewan, who I send my love to every single day. You have girls that have withdrawn from public education to avoid this scandal and to avoid being, having their dignity and their safety and their opinions robbed from them. And the government of Saskatchewan has come out and said, right, we're going to leave it up to the school boards. Well, the school boards are the ones who have created this problem. So the policies, this is what the school boards say. Right, we have policies around this, and we developed these policies after wide consultation with parents. They did not consult with parents. If anything, they only consulted with parents that already have their kids in gender diversity clubs and gender and sexuality clubs in schools, which is like insane on the
Crazy.
surface. It is insane on the surface. But Regina Public Schools calls itself a leader in the province as it pertains to this policy. And not only did they develop the policy around this self-ID into girls' spaces, but what they also did was prohibit any feedback. So they say, we're going to use this kind of language, we're going to abide by these kinds of, and then they fall back on the Saskatchewan Human Rights Code and the Canadian Human Rights Code. So this is what I just think it's real important for people to understand what happens to parents when they bring up these issues. We are stonewalled, we are insulted, we are screamed at in some cases. I was screamed at in my own kid's school after bringing up an adjacent topic to one of these. Because if you don't abide by their language, okay, if you don't abide by their sets of policies that they've laid out to specifically censor parents, well, then parents can't get a word in edgeways. And this is the government of Saskatchewan. What they did was kick the can down the field for parents, and they are making parents hold the bag on decisions that the government of Saskatchewan created for us. The government of Saskatchewan had a beautiful opportunity to do the right thing, and you know what they did instead? Nothing.
Yeah.
It's so maddening. We do have a petition.
Yes.
We do have a petition that you can sign if you're on side for parents, and we are going to get some feedback, I think, Sheila, to these school divisions who claim, like the Regina Public School Division does, that they've only had one parent complain. Only one parent since coming in. Well, now the parents know that they can complain. These are their children. There is nobody that's going to advocate on behalf of your children but you. Don'tbetrayparents.com is the website that you should visit, so we can let these school boards and Scott Moe know that the parents do have very, very strong opinions about this, because I mean across the board.
We gotta up our signatures. Look at that. We met our goal. Let's keep it going.
Canada, thank you so much. Thank you so much. Let's get to 10,000. Let's get to 10,000. We'll take this to Scott Moe. We'll take this to, you know what?
To the school board too.
I will pay to have 27 different versions of this petition sent to every single school board in Saskatchewan. If they're looking for permission, girl, I'm here to give it to them. We are in the business of giving social permission. So yes, I wish Scott Moe would have remained principled, but alas, he did not.
well, we can maybe push him back in the right direction with a whole whack of signatures headed his way. Speaking of the creators of the problem complaining when somebody points out that they're wrong, let's go to the Canadian Medical Association and the Alberta doctors. So, for those of you who have been following along, Tamara Ugolini here at Rebel News has done some great work on this, because that's sort of in her wheelhouse as, I think, Canada's foremost medical journalist. The Alberta Medical Association, known for censoring their doctors and pushing the unconstitutional and unscientific jabs known as vaccines on the public, they object to, and I'm dancing around this because I'm trying to keep this on YouTube. They object to a comprehensive report out of the province of Alberta, which advises against the administration of the COVID vaccines, based on a series of data, both provided by Pfizer and collected here in the province. And the Alberta Health refused to cooperate with the report, which delayed the report. Imagine the people who did this. The people who did this refused to cooperate with the examination of their work, just like the Liberals. We looked into our misdeeds and we found ourselves innocent. Well, we're seeing a little bit more of this. You may as well make the criminals the judge in the courtroom, shouldn't you? Now, Alberta doctors have said, we disagree with this. Of course they would. You wouldn't want to have a moment of self-reflection and maybe look at your own culpability in what you've done when you have a report saying that a lot of people were hurt. The Canadian Medical Association, also known for censoring skeptical doctors who are in hindsight right about a lot of things, they are backing the Alberta Medical Association on this. And all they have to say is the people who pushed this problem, of course they would object to a report that finds their advocacy of this policy wrongheaded and damaging to the public writ large. And further to their unscientific nonsense, these are the same people who think that boys can be girls and vice versa with a little bit of medical intervention. So I don't care what they have to say. I don't care.
You know what's so shocking to me, Sheila, is that these people don't understand that we are on to them and their validation circle jerk that they participate in. Like every time a provincial jurisdiction comes out with an announcement, and then it's picked up by the national body that then echoes the sentiments that were pushed forward by the provincial association, it flags it in smart people's brains to go like, right. So they really aren't interested in the truth. They're just interested in repeating the narrative. Like when it is picked up and repeated by a national body, number one, when it's originally reported by the provincial jurisdiction or the provincial association, and then it's picked up and repeated by the national body, all that does is perk the ears up of Canadians who have had it with these associations that are sticking near their ideology and their ideological capture rather than telling people the truth. So congratulations to both of those organizations for showing themselves to be completely ideologically captured and not interested in the health and well-being of actual Canadians.
Right. Like people are no longer part of the guys in lab coats experiment anymore, where a guy in a lab coat or a lady in a lab coat and bad bangs comes on TV and tells you that you need to follow her advice and then you just follow it blindly. People are done with that experiment and they are now skeptics. And if people are skeptics to a fault, who do you think is responsible for that? It's not the people who are trying to make it okay to be a skeptic, make it okay to ask questions. It's the people who lied from the very beginning that have damaged the credibility of these organizations. So if nobody believes doctors anymore, doctors, I think the phone call's coming from inside the house.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And this, like, we're seeing the same thing on the media side, and we're seeing the same thing in other industries and in other associations. When you have these groups of bureaucrats who are singularly interested in protecting themselves, this is the kind of degradation in public trust that you're going to experience immediately after. They are forgetting that the end user are the people that they should be most interested in upholding. And instead, they are showing themselves to be most interested in upholding themselves.
Yes, yes. We wouldn't want them to examine their conscience and find out that they were actually wrong and then have like a little bit
They
of a
were
come to
lacking.
Jesus moment. Yeah, no, it's like that meme with Principal Skinner is like, am I wrong? No, it's the kids who are wrong. It's completely it.
That's right.
We've got a few chats to breeze through. I'll do an ad read and then we'll get into the Foreign Interference Commission.
Yes.
The government examined itself and found itself innocent. Who could have figured that big boy out? But nothing shocking out of the Foreign Interference Commission. And I'll tell you why after I do the ad read. We've got one from Alberta Dawn, $5, says Trump canceled any mandate to build electric cars. Our automakers lose on every EV they must make. Ford should be reviewing our mandates. Well, it's not just Ford, it's Justin Trudeau. He's mandated, I think it was 2035. It could even be like 2030 because they accelerate everything. Yeah. Where every new vehicle in this country has to be net zero of some kind. So that's why and Doug Ford never said a peep about it because he was like,
he saw dollar signs.
Battery money.
That's right.
So, yeah. So now they're making all these cars. The EV mandate is probably going to fall in Canada with the election of Pierre Poilievre, and the Americans don't want these stupid electric cars. So Doug Ford hitched himself to the wrong cart.
Neither do Canadians. Right. I have never, ever heard a Canadian person say out loud, my goodness, I just can't wait to be tethered to my house via my car. Like Albertans couldn't run their space heaters last year. And you think that we have the base load to plug in every automobile that we have in 5 years? Are they out of their minds? Like, of course
they told us not to plug in our block heaters for our vehicles, which are an absolute must here in the wintertime. Yeah. They told us not to do that because of the draw on the grid.
That is insane. And they think that we are going to power our provinces and everybody's going to go to work on these things. I mean, that was an initiative, though, that those of us that live, and never mind our extremely hostile climates. I mean, show me
distances.
A battery that can... That's right. Show me a battery that can survive -40 over 800 kilometers, and I'll give you $100. But it just doesn't exist. The technology isn't there to support these initiatives that they forced upon us.
Our major cities are like 5 hours and 3 hours apart. Who wants to add an extra 2 hours to their trip between Edmonton and Calgary because you got to stop in Red Deer for 2 hours to recharge the battery? It's crazy.
No, exactly that. And God forbid you find yourself in a rural center that doesn't have the supercharger, no supercharger infrastructure. This is tethering people. This is tethering people to the cities. I mean, it's trying to tether people to the cities. That's exactly right. And I don't want any part of it. No part. We want zero part of this. So I'm happy to see EVs go the way of the dinosaur.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say go the way of the buffalo, but buffalo are back and better than ever. So go the way of the dinosaur.
Go the way of the dinosaur.
We've got, this is a nice rumble rant. Aaron Burton, 32, gives us $5 and says, between Trigger, that's my cat who made a celebrity appearance on Monday, put his butt on the keys and zoomed in really close to my face. Between Trigger and Lise, I like the special guest hosts lately. Oh, that's very nice.
Thank you, Aaron.
Trigger is outside, and he will remain outside unless the dog opens the door and the two gang up on me, and he comes in here and gets on the keyboard again.
Such a little scamper he is. Scamper.
Yeah. The kids wanted a Garfield cat and said they got strong Nermal vibes from him.
Orange? I just want to say this. I saw that you got an orange cat and I was like, oh, because orange cats have a way about them. Like they have the biggest personalities and they just give no craps. They just give no craps. Like you can't police a regular cat, but you have no chance with an orange cat. None at all. They just do what they want 100% of the time.
He's just figuring out how windows work. He brained himself trying to jump off my kitchen table into my dining room window because there was a blue jay in the tree.
Oh,
And he
does he
just
make that?
thump.
Does he make that funny little meow that they make, like that little chattery meow? That is my favorite. Is watching cats discover birds. My favorite.
He discovered them and possibly a concussion. Okay, we got a quick ad read, and then we'll go into Justice Marie-Josée Hogue. So this one is from 1775coffee.com. Do you enjoy the free speech that Rumble is protecting and fighting for? Our show on Rumble is only possible thanks to our viewers supporting Rumble's platform and by purchasing Rumble's products. Most of you drink coffee every day. That's why you have to try Rumble's 1775 coffee. It's actually some of the best coffee, and it's the same price as the coffee you buy now, but it's way better. Rumble's 1775 coffee is free from chemicals, rich in flavor. This is because their beans are sourced from high-altitude farms in Bolivia, handpicked, roasted weekly at their facility in Miami, and then delivered fresh to your doorstep. And as believers in freedom, buying from Rumble helps fight back against woke corporations like Starbucks and Dunkin' Donuts. That Dunkin' Donuts going woke just baffles me. Join the coffee revolution and brew rebellion with Rumble 1775 coffee. Go to 1775coffee.com, use the code STUDIO, and get a free month's supply of their cognitive boosting supplement Limitless when you buy 2 bags of their coffee. Think about that. It's a crazy deal, and the supplement is worth more than the 2 bags of coffee. Go to 1775coffee.com and try their amazing coffee. Do we have a Rebel ad, or are we just going to go into Justice Hogue? Olivia? Okay, we'll just keep going. Let's show this video of Justice Marie-Josée Hogue. She is the commissioner of the Foreign Interference Commissioner who, at the beginning of the second half of the commission, which I had the unfortunate trauma of having to sit through, just having my time in my life burgled by this nonsense, knowing that nothing would ever come of it. At the beginning of the second half, she said, the names of people implicated by CSIS, so by security officials, 11 parliamentarians, so that's Senate and House of Commons, that are implicated wittingly and unwittingly. Now, I think Mary Ng was unwitting because I don't think she does anything wittingly. I don't think she's bright enough. So there are 11 parliamentarians. We know the names of a couple just by virtue of the guy opposite Kenny Chu or Han Dong, guys like that. But she said we weren't going to know their names no matter what. Even if she found them to be involved, she would never release the names. The CSIS already determined that, so we should have been able to know. But anyways, her findings came out and she said, China is doing things. China did do some damage in some ridings, probably extensively in some nomination processes, but instead of giving us a fulsome account of what happened, she gave us the case for revamped Bill C-63. So look at this.
Government has the primary responsibility for ensuring national security and protecting our democratic institutions. But what I have read and heard convinces me that society as a whole must contribute to defending these institutions if we want to ensure their survival. Foreign actors are no longer content to use traditional means to interfere. They are also using sophisticated technological means and increasingly sowing disinformation in traditional media, but above all on social media. Distinguishing what is true from what is false is becoming increasingly difficult. And the consequences are, in my view, extraordinarily harmful. The impact of traditional methods should not be underestimated, but the greatest threat, the one that I believe threatens the very existence of our democracy, is disinformation. This threat is all the more nefarious because the means available to counter it are limited and very difficult to implement. Nevertheless, we must not give up, but rather attack it forcefully altogether. This cannot be the sole purview of government. It will not work.
So any government official that starts rambling on about misinformation and disinformation should not be trusted by the population of the country in which that person represents. Because this is a person who is wholesale participating in the censorship machine, currently holding Canadians hostage as political prisoners in Canada, and only interested in maintaining the narrative of the government that pays her to say such things. I mean, honestly, I couldn't believe that she just said what she said.
She complained in her statement. This was my big takeaway. She complained in her statement that the government was not forthcoming enough about the threats of foreign interference to MPs as the threats were ongoing, like to Kenny Chu, who's being actively targeted by China, to Michael Chong, who is actively being targeted by China out of the consulate. And the PMO knew all about this stuff because they were getting briefings as members of the government, but they never bothered to brief the targets. And so she said the government wasn't forthcoming enough about those things, while not being forthcoming enough about the names of people who were named by CSIS. She's not forthcoming enough. I don't know what any of this was about. All I know is 6 weeks of my life just disappeared. And there are things that the government could do that don't involve censorship. For example, we know that most of the targeting was being done on WeChat, which is a Chinese social media everything app. Ban WeChat. We know most of the organizing and the misinformation and disinformation being spread about Conservative Party candidates, that was happening on WeChat. It's a Chinese government app. Nothing was done about WeChat. You know what the government did? They said to TikTok, you have to close your head office in Canada. Big whoop. We still have the apps on our phone. It's still rewiring the brains of our young people. But WeChat is the real problem, and no one's done a damn thing about it.
Well, and she said something really interesting about, needing to combat misinformation and disinformation to protect the institutions. Incorrect, lady. You need to protect the citizens of your country first. Be damned what happens to these institutions, these highly corrupt, ineffective,
the ones that failed us.
Failed institutions. These institutions are so corrupt. Canadians see no way out of the destructive nature of them, other than maybe defecting to the United States. And yet she's saying we're going to protect the institution. We need to protect our institutions. Incorrect answer, madame. Incorrect.
Let's bop ahead. I know we're way over time. Olivia, thanks for bearing with us. I just want to show this, Justin Trudeau. He says Holocaust survivors have told him never again seems to be slipping a bit. Yeah, I guess so. Have you seen Toronto on the weekend? Then he blames social media and AI for creating anger, fear, and division. And then he forgets who he's talking about. This is he's at Auschwitz. And he starts rambling on about Islamophobia, homophobia, and transphobia.
Oh my God.
How embarrassing.
Various Holocaust commemorations in Canada and engagements with Holocaust survivors around the world over the past number of years. I have heard repeatedly people talk about the fact that never again seems to be slipping a little bit.
A lot.
The divisions that we see, the hatred, yes, the rise in anti-Semitism around the world, but also the rise of Islamophobia, the rise of homophobia and transphobia,
Oh my
the hatreds
God.
that are dividing peoples across borders in just about every regions of the world are cause for alarm. The tools that AI and social media are bringing to bear on populations as ways of creating more anger, more fear, more division are truly alarming. It's not about left or right. We see moments of extremism coming from all ends of the political spectrums.
I'm embarrassed.
It's actually humiliating. Like
Yes.
this is a drama teacher who has rehearsed his lines. Islamophobia, homophobia, transphobia so many times that even in some of the worst circumstances that humanity has ever suffered, he will just throw those words in like a word salad to try and I cannot wait until the earth is rid of this or not the earth, the country. Well, and the earth, I suppose. The earth will be better off when this guy is gone. But comparing the murder of 6 million Jews to regular Canadians not wanting their kids to be force-fed pride flags is quite a departure, don't you think? There's a little bit of a difference there. Just a little smidge of a difference there. Yeah.
And again, the phone calls coming from inside the house, Justin. When you say never again is slipping, you should ask yourself why you are the leader of a country that allows supporters of an outlawed terror organization to march through the streets and especially Jewish neighborhoods in Canada's largest, most diverse city every single weekend. I hope you can find the guy in charge and ask him what's going on, Justin.
Why did you import millions of people that believe that that's a great thing, Justin? Why did you import those people specifically into Canada to be able to say those things in our streets? I mean, it is the shocking disconnect between that guy and his perceived notions of what's happened in Canada. I mean, he is just incapable of understanding that this is all because of him and because of the decisions of his government.
Yeah, and let's remember where he's saying these things about Islamophobia, transphobia, homophobia. He's saying it in Poland, one of the most socially conservative places on the face of the earth. This is a day of Holocaust remembrance. Please don't shoehorn your nonsense into this, especially in Poland. They don't have the time of day for this.
That is a true story. And if America doesn't take us, I'm looking at Poland as a great place to immigrate to. I mean, I will learn Polish.
I'll slide right in. I'll be the mayor of a small Polish coal town before you know it. Okay, one last thing. This was and I know, thank you, Olivia, for bearing with us. We're much over time. Trudeau's son, how do we say his name? Zav? Zave. He's making his rap debut. Let's watch the video and then we'll comment on it together. Zav. His album drops February 21st, 2025. Good grief. No more Trudeaus.
How are we going to shore up the support for the Liberal Party of Canada? Wait, we got another Trudeau to trot out to the population of young Canadians. We need to start labeling this kid a pre-loser before this even catches on to the young women of Canada. We saw, what women did when Justin Trudeau appeared upon the scene. Like, if magazine covers could have been scratch and sniff at the time, they would have sold out of Trudeau covers. We must not fall for this garbage again. But really, the country is on fire. We're facing a trade war with our nearest partner. Everybody is screaming for a federal election. And what does Junior Trudeau do? Launch his rap career. Like, no, we're full. We got Drake. Thanks very much. We do not need another bad rapper.
That reminds me of when David Menzies took us on the nickel and dime tour of Drake's neighborhood.
Nobody has heard the stories of our crazy, insane tour of Toronto in December, but it was the best day of my life. I'm not exaggerating when I say it was the funnest 36 hours of my entire life. I was nearly kidnapped by my Uber driver. That was the first thing. I was nearly kidnapped by an
Who could blame 'em?
Uber driver. But then David Menzies took us on a driving tour of Toronto and took us to Drake's house. And when I say that it was the pinnacle of my life experience, I'm not exaggerating. It was the funnest day ever.
He also was kind enough to pull over on the freeway when I almost puked in his car.
Poor Sheila gets motion sick in the back of
I
cars.
do.
Man, that's all we did.
Yeah. What a good time.
You were good though. You survived. You survived.
Yeah,
I'm proud of you.
Yeah. But back on Zav,
Zav?
just no more Nepo babies. No more Trudeau Nepo babies. S'il vous plaît. I'm there.
Could you amount? So I have a theory that Justin Trudeau is avenging his father's legacy, right? Like he has just been on a 10-year project to try and repair the legacy that his father left. Because when he left, I mean, he wasn't in good standing with the Western provinces, that's for sure. So along comes Justin Trudeau, and he's going to try and make things right, and then he absolutely or punish us, and craps the bed. Absolutely craps the bed. Does more damage than any one of us could have reasonably expected. Could you imagine the damage that one of the next Trudeau kids could make? Could you imagine? This is why I'm committed to eviscerating the Liberal Party for the next 40 or 50 years, because I do not want our children and our grandchildren to suffer the wrath of the third generation of Trudeaus when they come and avenge this absolute disaster of a prime minister.
I hope he just goes into music and then just leaves us all alone.
But do the parents not have, like, Sophie wouldn't have looked at her son and said, listen, the country is not in a good spot right now, and this might not be well received. But nobody? No. We need to, support and affirm.
She's busy teaching us how to make noises wearing yoga pants. Did you see that? Good gracious.
Next week we need to play that for people. Okay, we need to play that clip of for people, because if you didn't think that Sophie was right, completely removed. This is how she deals with being married to the most hated man in Canada.
I go rip some Coors Lights and put some arrows in a styrofoam deer. She poses in yoga and makes yoga pants and makes noises. I'm not sure which one of us is right, which of one of us is wrong. Maybe she's living a better life than me. I don't know, but we'll compare next week.
Yeah. Okay, deal.
Okay, we've got a meeting in 5 minutes. Yankee says we got to wrap it up, and he is right. We've got one last chat. Abu Ben gives us $10.
I will show you. Oh, I'm so happy you asked, Abu Ben. This says, I stand with Danielle Smith. You can get, it says, I stand with Danielle Smith. This is a piece of Canadian culture that you can get at aprilhutchison.com. Our friend April Hutchison sells beautiful merch, and you can get one for yourself there. And it is such an amazing, comfy hoodie. Thanks so much for asking about it. Again, head on over to aprilhutchison.com to get yours. To support Danielle Smith. Thank you so much for joining us, everybody. We'll be back sometime soon. And thanks so much for contributing to the Rebel Rants. And yeah, thanks again, Canada, for joining us this Rebel Roundup.
We'll redouble our efforts to build Ontario's economy. We will do whatever it takes to protect workers
You're welcome,
and their
honey.
livelihoods.
Thanks for having me.
We will invest tens of billions of dollars in new spending to keep people working. We will work with unions and businesses to retain and reskill our hardest hit workers. And as we do, we need to do everything possible to keep our economy competitive. We'll keep up the fight against the job-killing Liberal carbon tax, and we're urging the federal government to join us in cutting red tape and streamlining approvals to get big things built faster. We'll redouble our efforts.